Good morning, Chairwoman Pingree, Ranking Member Joyce, and members of the House Subcommittee. I am Fawn Sharp, Vice President of the Cornwall Indian Nation and President of the National Congress of American Indians. Thank you for the invitation to testify this morning. This subcommittee's jurisdiction includes some of the most critical funding for Indian country. As detailed in the 2018 Broken Promises Report, chronically underfunded and inefficiently structured federal programs have left some of the most basic obligations of the United States to tribal nations unmet for centuries. We call on this subcommittee and Congress to get behind the vision of tribal leaders for righting these wrongs by providing mandatory, full, and adequate funding for Indian country. The President's fiscal year 23 budget request is a historic shift in the paradigm of nation-to-nation relationships, one that seeks to restore the promises made to our ancestors. It includes requesting mandatory funding for Indian Health Service, contract support costs, and Section 105L leases. Providing mandatory funding to these programs promotes the opportunity for a tribal nation-driven approach to serving our communities and citizens. Under the current discretionary spending model at IHS, the per patient investment is about 56% less than the national health spending per capita. At an average age of 37 years old, IHS hospitals are nearly 4 times the age of hospital facilities nationwide. It would take nearly 400 years to replace and update these facilities with the funding currently provided. We see the same staggering issues for education. The weighted student unit for the Bureau of Indian Education school system is approximately half that of public schools. Further, DOI recently rated 86 schools in poor condition, with an estimated cost of $5.1 billion for replacement. Last month, the NCAI board toured the Casablanca Community School, a BIE school built by the Gila River Indian community using the Section 105 lease program. This state-of-the-art school was built in a record time with input from the entire community. As soon as the children step off the bus, they are grounded and surrounded by their culture, their language, and their stories in a fully inclusive educational environment. Mandatory funding for the 105L lease program means empowering tribal nations to build the bright future we all see for Indian country. Turning to law and justice, the safety of our communities is in crisis and of the utmost importance. The 2019 Tribal Law and Order Act report to Congress estimates the need for BIA public safety and justice programs at $2.73 billion, 5 times the amount of funding provided in 2022. With tribal nations' criminal jurisdiction being further restored in the recent reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act and beyond, Indian country must be provided the necessary funding to protect our communities. Finally, with a long history of federal Indian policies, many tribal lands have been placed in the hands of the federal government with a trust responsibility to conserve and protect them. However, tribal nations' voices have been heard, and we are now assuming greater roles of stewardship and co-management of public lands. These opportunities demonstrate creative management solutions through tribal-federal partnerships. This subcommittee must continue to increase resources provided for tribal co-management of federal land. It is essential for tribal nations to bring our solutions, our traditional ecological knowledge to the table with federal partners to combat the climate change crisis. From what we have seen over the last few years and what we've known all along, when tribal nations are provided the parity and deference to provide programs and services, we see substantial positive changes within our communities. NCAI urges the subcommittee to work with the Budget Committee to fund mandatory obligations through mandatory federal spending and provide funding for programs commensurate to those obligations and not just the status quo. Tribal nations are resilient, and we have demonstrated our resolve and dedication since time immemorial. We expect to continue to be treated as sovereign nations and with governmental parity and equity. When we work together, we have proven we can achieve more than we thought possible. We must now continue down the path of nation-to-nation growth, and only then will all of our people truly be able to flourish. Siakul, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Jason Dropik, President of the National Indian Education Association. Thank you so much for joining us today.